Okay, today I have the great pleasure to speak to Andrej Kobal. Andrej is somebody I met at Expo, and I had like a real jaw dropper moment with him. He was showing off at the science fair at Expo. He was showing off his software Granularize. I was blown away. It was this fabulous combination of sampler and effects processor and granular rewarper, and it was a great tool for live. It had an excellent interface with an iPad. I just fell in love with it, and I went like immediately that night and bought it off of his website, which he had just kicked off. I am blown away by this, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to him now a little bit about his work. So with that, I'm going to say hello to Andrej. Hey, Andrej, how are you?
Hi, Darwin. Thanks so much, and thanks for having me. I really like your podcast, and I'm really glad to be here. And also, thanks for liking so much my project. This was really a wonderful feedback from you and all the guys from cycling. So yeah, I mean, you get this. It was like a reward for me being at the Expo, which was fantastic. I have learned a lot. I have several interaction, and I mean, I saw all the people that I was, before just looking at the internet, maybe at the cycling forum, or I love them as an artist, and I had there a wonderful opportunity to meet them, and so it was really enthusiastic for me, and I was really that was really a beautiful experience for me to be at the Expo.
Well, it's actually a really great experience for us too, because from the standpoint of making the software, we look out and we see these amazing things that the users are doing, and we're like, boy, I wonder what that person's like, or I would really like to find out, how they did that, right? And so having the opportunity to meet you all face to face is really great as well. So for people who maybe haven't got a chance to hear about or see anything about Granularize, why don't you give us a little overview about what all is kind of encapsulated in the software?
Yeah, so basically, I started Granularize, let's say, as a tool for making music. I have dived a lot, in a lot of like VST instruments, DAW, and I have really dig deep in that field, but I couldn't find some tools that I was interested in, and obviously then I discovered Max, which was the perfect tool to build your own environment, and to use it as your creative workflow. And there was like really some simple things that weren't available in more commercial softwares. And it was like, there was not, let's say, a sampling tool that would, allow you to record a sample lively and then transform it immediately. Mm-hmm. And that was like just a simple idea how to start. And then gradually I start to evolving, let's say, this is more, let's say I am representing in this software, let's say my musical ideas. So that was how I see music, how I want to interpret it, how I want to use it, let's say in a live situation or why not even in a sound installation, because I'm doing also a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And so it was also, how to think of a software, because this is again one thing that I didn't find in a lot of software, how to think of it less as a software and more as an instrument, like that you can interact with it, and that you can play it like let's say a piano or a violin, and also I think the whole moment was it's still perfect, because you have like this MP integration, which really lets you bend and really go deep in your expression. But I also want to achieve that same kind of thing with this Granularize, to really be control it, the software as it was an instrument. And so mm-hmm. I introduced the one important aspect of it is the gesture interaction. And this works really well with an iPad, but also with the mouse or any controller, because it lets you interact, let's say in a live situation or in a sound design situation, and you interact with it as it were an instrument. So you basically you define the position, because this is basically a granular synth. You define the position, the X and the axis and the Y axis, and you define the position on the waveform, which part you're going to use. But the best part is that you can also automate this process, and so basically it becomes some sort of conducting this wave selection, and basically you get a lot of musical content from that, because you can go like from more slower part of the waveform to the more louder part, and you are obviously building, let's say, a crescendo from that. And since this is automated, you can leave it there and it's going to work like a loop, but it's basically not a loop, it's a loop that you have created with your gesture. So this becomes interesting. And obviously, if you repeat too much, you tend to get boring, but then you can add new gestures, and these gestures are then repeated in various sections of the interface, and you can then morph presets, also the volume and pen interaction. And so you have like this constantly, and this is again one thing that I was looking in a lot of software. This you get this constantly evolving sound. And because I like, let's say, semi-improvised compositions and improvised composition, and this was the perfect tool to build, because you can build like semi-prepared structures, but then you can always interact in a live situation. And so you have like these semi-prepared structures which you can change in a live situation, and you have like some sort, you are in a, let's say, improvising environment, but you have some sort of control, because maybe you have prepared something and then you will interact with your gesture. So this was the kind of the idea. And also some other things. I like to think also, the DAOs are cool, but Max is even cooler, because I could build a system which go outside of the grid. We are always stuck as musicians, as electronic musicians, we are always stuck on the grid. We are always putting these notes on the grid, and it's kind of boring. I don't know, for me, it is kind of boring. And so I was thinking how to build, let's say, a rhythm, and like on an instrument, you build a rhythm by playing it. And the same here with the gesture, basically you can build a rhythm, or some interaction. And so you get this, you are outside of the grid, but you still, the band, if you play with the band, it can follow you, like more in an improvised way, or even in let's say more in a more why not rock or pop way. So it's an option.
Well, I'll tell you, when I first got that first demo of Granular from you, it was one of those things where it kept on revealing more interesting stuff. So you kind of showed initially sort of like doing some sampling and working with some audio, and then, some of the looping and granularization functions. And it was very exciting to see that, especially sort of the really live and playable nature of it. So I saw where you were going with it as being kind of instrument-like. But the one that I wasn't expecting was you talk about it being automation, but when I think of automation, it's kind of too locked to a DAW. I almost think of it as like you're finding a way to sequence movement in a very interesting way. And my God, the way that changes how you think about software working, then it sort of comes alive right under your fingers. And it was really exciting to see.
Yeah, you get a better inspiration. Yeah, because it's not automation. It's you basically you have like a gestural sequence, and also the thing that was interesting to me, because in this let's say conventional scenes, you get a lot of like these matrices and LFOs and stuff. But basically here all is done with a gesture, and so it gets quite intuitively. I mean, I really like because if you would like to do something similar with an LFO, you have a lot of work to do to come to let's say an interesting result. But here basically your gesture can become, let's say, I call it a human LFO. So basically you put your gesture and you can do it, let's say, slow gesture, but then you can alter the speed and it can become really fast. So you're going to the, let's say, the LFO area but basically you have defined the positions with your gesture. So you are controlling and lively this interaction. I think that's kind of interesting.
It's powerful. Yeah. I remember I had an interview. I think it was when I interviewed with Jordan Rudess. He talked about how the kinds of how you don't have to use a lot of LFOs and other things in your synth design when you have access to MPE, because now your gestures become the LFOs and the expression pedals and the envelopes and stuff like that. This is something that you built into the device, where by being able to record those things, you don't have to continue doing them forever. I mean, the one idea of like using a MPE thing for doing an LFO is I don't want to just sit there and push and pull and push and pull in order to keep my LFO going. In your case, you kind of record that gesture and now it can keep on running, right?
Yeah, sure. And I also like, I mean, the MPE, also this is an interesting, interaction. As I was talking before, the problem of sampling was also, obviously, when you record just one sample, you don't have like that much control as you have it in, let's say, Contact, because there are lots of samples.
Right, yeah.
But the cool thing about MPE was also this, because now the hardware device, the MPE device, becomes some sort of physical modeling device, so that you can really shape that one sample. I mean, and I'm more, let's say, in experimental music, and I like, that process. So it was kind of interesting. So yeah, the moment also I see a lot of interesting moments that can come from, let's say, these new techniques, and also the implementation in Max. And now thanks to the MC stuff, I have done some tests, and it's really interesting what you can do with MP and MC. Let's say it can awesome. Be really. Lot of potential. I see it there.
Well, that's cool. One of the things I like doing in my podcast is talking to people about how they got where they are. And it sounds to me like your development of the Granular software really came out of your personal music making experience and how you wanted to do it. I'm curious, what is your background? How did you get started as a musician? And then how did you also grow into including programming as part of that?
I love music from when I was really young. I mean, my father, he used to listen a lot of, let's say, progressive rock and jazz. He introduced me to all, King Crimson and John Coltrane. I mean, I still love this period. It was really nice. But then eventually I started, when I was still a student, I started to make some, let's say, DJ sets. And from there I moved to, let's say, I had some groups and I played in a band. But obviously, as I heard also a lot of on your podcast, I mean, there is always, people tend to leave bands and you lose contact. And there are some people that are serious, other not so much. So then eventually you get, as I heard on the podcast, so you get a rhythm machine or something. And at that time, first I went to the SAIA Institute here in Slovenia, and I learned a lot about, these conventional music concepts. But then because I'm always interested in, let's say, more experimental stuff and improvisation and so on. I also did some of that workshops, but I was always looking for some kind of solution for my not having again to go in a band and to the whole process. And so at that time, I discovered Max, and I followed some artists that they were using it. And so I started a little bit to dig in. But then I was lucky that there was one professor here who was, actually in Slovenia, we don't have Max, a lot of Max users, and we don't have it at the academy. And so I went to Italy, and there was a composer, Roberto Girolin, which was really a good one, because he taught me how to use Max, but also how to integrate it in my, let's say, musical interaction, and how to not just think of it just as a tool, but more as an instrument, as a music, as an expression tool, as a tool to make composition in the end. And so it was really nice that I was taught by him, and I really enjoyed that. And so then eventually I started to, at that time I started basically to build a little bit of Granular, and what is now become Granular. And then I was always experimenting. Even when I finished this study, I went on with this project. And so I was lucky also that basically I forgot to mention it before, but I will now, that basically Granular became my main project. But I have one partner, which was my teacher at the SAIA Institute, and now he helped me a lot, and he's constantly contributing to the Granular development, and so I'm really lucky. This is Boštjan Pirnar. I would like to mention him because he's really in a help, and I think of him as a partner in this project because he's really in it. And so basically, thanks to Granular, I also got a lot of more, let's say, I got more concerts, and I did some really nice concerts in Italy and in Slovenia also. And so I started, to do more I think thanks to this project, I kind of evolve, and I'm doing, let's say, the music that I really like to do. So let's say more acousmatic, but from time to time experimental music. But I'm not fixed one music. I actually like all kinds of music, and I can get a lot of from all kinds of music. And also I really like this concept. Also when I'm let's say performing that. Also the electronic music, because usually in electronic music we think of loops and prepared patterns and stuff and sequences, but I like to think more of it, let's say, as a really playable instrument, so that you can just prepare, let's say, your samples, but then you will play them thanks also to the MP and to the Granular tool. You will play it lively, so you're basically doing almost the same work as a guitarist do on the concert. So basically you play the electronics, and this is kind of process that I like, and then I like to explore even more. So that's why also I built this tool.
Sure. It's interesting that you keep on coming back to it as being an instrument, because watching you work with it definitely feels that way. But also what I found is that when I lit it up on my screen, despite the fact that I saw you work it the way that you do, I found myself moving in a different way, which I think that's kind of like, if you take a guitar, not everybody plays the guitar the same way, right?
Yeah, sure.
Different people have some people like to strum, some people like to pick, some people like to smash it on the ground. I don't know. Yeah. But you have developed something that kind of offers that to people. That's really neat. Now, how long have you been working on Granular?
As I said, I started earlier when I was still studying the basic concepts. But now it's almost, let's say 5 years of.
5 years. Wow.
Not that I'm doing every day, but I'm doing it, let's say, constantly. So and then I do it more when I have time, and but the cool thing is, this is also what I forgot to mention, is that I have put some concepts that I can use it also in other fields. Let's say I'm doing also a lot of sound installations for a Mota museum. I work there with a guy who is more the hardware guy, Igor Vuk, and I'm more, let's say, the software guy. And so we are building these different sound installations. I'm also working in a theater. I done the Tesla performance, which I was doing in Max and Max for Life. So it was used to control, the motors and the DMX, the light show and everything. And so, you get this interaction. And now I'm also working with a nice, I really love her work, Slovenian composer Carmina Šilec. And also there, I'm still using the Granular, but I'm transforming to the needs that these composers have. And a lot of this interaction was nice, because then I have included some of the tools that I need for, let's say, some composer, and I have thrown it now as a feature in Granular. So it's always this kind of nice interaction.
Right.
So yeah, it's nice that you get this feedback from people, and and you have different visions, as you said, and different ideas, and it's kind of also from Boštjan Pirnar. I get he's the responsible for, let's say, that you have an option. I don't know if you saw it, that you have an option to step sequence each voice of the
that's what I actually kind of fell in love with that, because I've always been a little obsessed with step sequencers, and so to see that applied to things like loop points and stuff was pretty incredible.
That was not my idea. As I said, I'm not so into step sequences, but but now I use it a lot. So it's kind of nice, that you get this feedback, and then you said, "Oh, this is so cool." I never, I was never thinking of it, but then you get this interaction. It's really cool. Then it reveals you something new, and this is always nice when you work with other artists and composers, and this is really a beautiful interaction. So it's really nice to have that interaction.
Sure. So you're based out of Slovenia. Did you grow up there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm based in a really small village. I also, here we have really strong wind, like 150 kilometers. It's about 100 miles, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And it's really strong wind, and so yeah, I'm really in a small village. We are about 400 people here, and it's kind of nice from this perspective, because you can walk in the night and you get really this quiet environment. And then if it's wind, it's perfect, because you can really record only the wind. Also the motorway, it's kind of far away, so you won't hear it, and from that point, it's nice. From other point, let's say, of interaction, of talking, let's say, about Max, it's not so nice because you don't have a lot of people that will talk about that. But then, I mean, I have friends in Italy and also in Slovenia. I mean, in Ljubljana, and then you have these composers. It's really nice to work with them. So it's it's kind of nice to be here, and at the same time, it's kind of nice to move a little bit away. I mean, also this was the Expo thing was my first time in America, and I really love it because you get this really big interaction of a lot of people, and it was really a wonderful experience for me. So and also it was really nice to meet you and all the other guys. So it was really cool.
Yeah, well, you were garnering a lot of attention. I remember, I think on our website it actually shows a picture of you like showing off Granular to like Gerhard Bellis from Ableton and Jeremy Bernstein from cycling. And I'm like, holy cow, that's a pretty star-studded picture. That's really cool. But I'm a little curious, like from your perspective, what did growing up in Slovenia and what does being there now, how does that actually help you be the artist that you are? I mean, do you find that it helps you maintain your own voice? Do you find that it allows you to have more solitary time, or do you sometimes feel like it's too limiting?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the free, I think. I mean, from time to time, I mean, I really like this, quietness. Here I have like, you can really experiment, going out. I really, when you do max patching, then your hours can really get into deep night. I mean, and then I really like, I go for a walk and I can be really creative in that, just walking and thinking how to solve things, but also like, as I said, field recording stuff. And I mean, it can be really creative. And it's really nice, but sometimes you also can feel that maybe there's not so much interaction, maybe you are a bit strange from like what do you actually do, and so it can be really inspiring but also a bit limiting at the time. But then again, when you interact with other people, and thanks also to this project, I'm really traveling a lot, and I really like it because I know. So and then it's kind of cool always to, I don't see myself. Maybe I don't know. I will have to try that. But I never lived really in a big city. So I was living as a student a little bit in Ljubljana, but Ljubljana is kind of a small city. But I never really lived in a big city, and I don't know if I mean, at first it could be really nice. I think I was from 1 month living in Venice, and it was really nice. But then, eventually, if you be there, I don't know if I'm gonna miss this place or not. So I'm not completely sure, but I think I will, because it's kind of nice to get this this quietness, this calm, and you can really, I mean, in the cities everything is fast, and you are constantly in some city flow, and here it can be sometimes really inspiring also. So I don't know. It's kind of nice to see all that parts of let's say the more crowdy part and the more calm part. So yeah, and definitely influenced me. I mean, I'm recently doing a composition from field recording of wind, but adding a little bit, let's say, augmented wind with some strings and electronics, and also granulation, and that's really. I mean, I like this concept when you as an artist somehow represent the ambient that you are living in, and it doesn't have to be like ethnological music, but like. Here is this wind that is really particular. I mean, if I listen to the field recordings of other winds, like wind from the desert, it's not the same. I mean, it has its own characteristic. And I mean, wind is kind of interesting because it doesn't happen until it goes into something. So here we have like these trees, and then it's only represented by this this noise of the trees. So it's kind of, and it can be really inspiring. I mean, and I like that. So it's inspiring.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it. I actually used to live kind of on a mountaintop, and we would also get 100-mile-an-hour winds, 150 kilometer winds. And I remember that for me, there was like in that area, those really high winds were actually very scary, right? And so the winds would come up, and as they would come up, they would have like a physical effect on me, right?
Yeah, sure. I
think it's really interesting to think in terms of that having maybe a different physical relationship depending on where you are and what that wind even sounds like.
a kind of person that I like these extremes. I really to go out in at winter in strong winds and do and try to do some recording and stuff. And so yeah, I mean it's interesting. But yeah, as you said, it gets different from part to part, and it's it's interesting, I think.
So in terms of making your own music, what do you like doing? I mean, the software kind of implies things like building off of loops, granularization being kind of an interesting way to tear apart the sound into more elemental things, the use of movement, the use of effects. These all, those kind of imply what you do. How would you describe the music that you make?
I mean, I'm always fascinated by this, also old composers. Let's say, we were taking there when I was studying like Stockhausen, Xenakis, and all that. But I also like that this professor Roberto, he also introduces to some, let's say, more new composer at the time, and he really introduced me into, let's say, more recent acousmatic music, which I really like. I mean, I don't know how it's pronounced, the Imprintis Digital, the label Imprintis Digital. Yeah, I really like it, their production, and so I really like, I see this music as something really interesting for me. But then again, I have done works that somehow represent that let's say genre. But then again, I felt like, this is more like, okay, acousmatic, and you don't have you don't play anymore, and you have just this lots of speaker, and it's also really, I mean, I really like this concept of creating a space with music. So I really like this concept, and that's why acousmatic music fascinates me so much.
Sure.
But then again, I was looking, in a way to let's say, to not prepare although it's not prepared, because you actually play the specialization, everything in acousmatic music. But I really like also this idea, of, let's say, playing some sort of, not only acousmatic music, let's say experimental, and why not also acousmatic music, but play it, let's say, lively with, like with an instrument. And so in my performance, I use basically the keyboard as my main, the MPE keyboard.
Interesting, yeah.
As my main device, along with some other controllers. I really like the Monom stuff, and the arc and the grid, and also the loops and everything, and then I integrate it with Granular. So basically, recently I started to use it just Granularize with some prepared loops in Ableton, and this is basically my setup in a live performance. But basically, the keyboard along with the Granularize, I like to play it with that. So usually I will have just the keyboard, on my legs, and I will play it lively as an instrument.
Right.
We are coming again there, but yeah. So I actually like this kind of so that it's like live made electronics on the spot, and I also like I was lucky to play in quite a few places in Milan and Venice, where there was like lots of speaker, and so you could build a whole really big system, and it was really, really nice to play there, because then you can apply this to the MP setup and to the Granular setup, and it can be really, really powerful. And I really like that. Also the ambient was really nice in Venice. Was this at the Conservatorium, this big old hall, and it was really nice to be there. So yeah, I like that kind of let's say, I'm performing in this way.
How often do you like change your setup or change your instrumentation, or maybe even go into the Granularize program and change it for a specific venue or a specific performance? Do you ever do that, or do you try and leave it alone as an instrument and just preset up different settings and samples and sequences?
No. Basically, my setup is constantly changing. So I'm also modifying a lot the Granularize software for my needs. I also also for some installation I have done, since I have split all the 16 voices so that I can control each voice independently. I also made a system for an installation when each grain would go with an aux. So I made another system that was an aux, which each grain was going to its own speaker. So it was kind of. Yeah, it was an interesting interaction.
But it was.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I mean, now I'm also controlling a little bit of. I recently got into some modular stuff, so I'm adding more, let's say, the modular. But I like more like the crazy stuff. I use now, and one friend was selling to me because he said I cannot make it in tune, and this was the, I don't know if the Folktech mescaline.
Oh yes, yeah.
And so I bought it from him, and and I'm now experimenting with that. But also recently I also found, because it was kind of hard to find, but I found the owl, the modular from Rebel Technology,
right?
And it's. And again, here the max interaction. I mean, I remember, when I was still studying this stuff, it was like, ooh, if we could put this, to some kind of hardware, device, and then in 5 years you are there. And now the Gen code is really superb for that, and
very fun, yeah.
And it's really powerful. So and also as I said, I really like. I also included like some. MC stuff now with MPs for my performances, which is also, I mean, crazy. I also had this problem in Granular, because we record this regional loop, the sound source, let's say. And it was kind of problematic for me because it was kind of boring to just, loop it. I mean, it could be interesting, but then again, nothing much was happening. And so I was thinking, I don't know, I should drop it or maybe keep it, or I don't know what to do with it. And then Max 8 came out, and I was, okay, here is the solution, to include that with an MC. And now the loop device is like super cool for me. I like it a lot. And also this Slovenian composer, Carmina Šilet, she was really enthusiastic just about, the loop with MC, which transforms with, let's say, with the harmonics or with the deviate option. And she's now just, at first he was a little bit skeptical because I have, like a random pitch. I put it, I like this concept, I put a random pitch, but then, with the V8, and we are creating some sort of, this really big clusters. And at first he was, no, I need the score. I need to know where it's going to be, the thing. But then she was getting more and more enthusiastic that even if it's random and you get this cluster, she was really enthusiastic that what kind of sonic results we are having from that. And so it became really a nice tool.
Are you saying that so for people who are listening that don't know the MC system in Max, sure. It's basically a way to make it so that objects calculate on multiple channels. So one patch cord can have up to 256 channels. So are you saying that in your looper, you actually have like 16 of them all of processing simultaneously?
First, you can select a smaller portion of the loop that's on the waveform, and then you can repeat this process. But one feature that was even in pre-MC era, let's say, that I added was that you can also then transform the pitch of it, and I added let's say a random pitch yeah. But then the fun part was when MC came, and so basically you have like so again, in a way, you have another granular device in a way, because and then you can add the harmonic content or the subharmonic or the offset of pitches, the deviate option, and then you have like 4 of them, and so you can add also additional samples. So this is just the sound source, and then you can add 4 additional samples, which doesn't have to be in a granular engine, but you add it, and then you can form these 4 additional sound sources, and you can create really complex things. And then I also included an oscillator, so you can choose between a sample or an oscillator. And again, it was previously it was kind of hard to make, let's say, the Stockhausen thing, the harmonic cascade. In Max it was. Yeah, we have done it in the studies, but it was kind of complex. And now, thanks to the MC, it was like, okay, we can do it really.
Yeah, you send one message and it just happens, right?
Yeah, and it just happened. But then again, it was okay. Harmonic cascade is cool, but what was really interesting for me is that I put it just a simple metro, that it can be synced to the let's say to the master tempo. But it's kind of cool because the harmonic cascade then it starts, but you are actually blocking it. And I like really these concepts in Granular, and you don't see this a lot of in other software. When you can destroy or interact, destroy temporarily one parameter. So basically, here the harmonic cascade starts, but then since you have like a metro, it will go back to the start. So you get this really punchy sound,
right.
And it was really, I mean, for me, it was quite, wow, this is so cool. I mean, you get this really, really strong sound because you are not actually listening to one oscillator, but basically to 16, I think, or 32. Sure. And it's really interesting. And so you get new sonic possibilities.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about while I have you on the line is something that I think is a very interesting but modern concept. And that has to do with releasing software being a way to open doors to other opportunities. You've talked about this a number of times now in our discussion, and I think that it's really a powerful thing. Until you started talking about and offering Granular as a piece of software for people to try, nobody really knew you that much. All of a sudden you do this and you start getting invitations out there and stuff. To what extent do you feel like a lot of the opportunities comes just simply from making your work public?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I haven't thought much of that, but it's true. I mean, it feels that I get more public because I can also, by let's say doing these presentations and other let's say interaction, I can more present my musical idea. And then also people get, let's say, more interested in my work thanks to my software. And it's true that I get much more invitation as, let's say, a software developer. Although I'm not a really software developer, I consider myself more that this software is just like an implementation of my musical ideas. And so I mean, it goes both ways. So let's say that people really like the concept of some musical ideas that also are interesting to them. Then I get, even more, let's say, live concerts and stuff thanks to this. And it's always kind of nice because a lot of time I will have like both. So I will have like one day the presentation of the software and another day a concert and stuff. And also I met a lot of artists, and also now I'm really glad and I'm preparing a sound library for the Granular, and I'm really lucky. I got to know a lot of really, really interesting artists, and there I have like so it's Boštjan Simon on the saxophone. I have Aleš Krebs on the bass, who is also then Boštjan Pirner on the guitar, and lots of other, also Carmina Šilec is contributing. And so I mean, it's really nice because now they are all willing to contribute, and so we are doing session, we are recording, and also nice because I'm meeting also with other artists, and so like graphic designer Aleš Krebs and Atej Tuta, video maker. So it's kind of nice because thanks to this project, I really widen my space of of creativity thanks to other people, and so it's really nice. A lot of good things has happened, and it's kind of, I always think of it kind of reward for for the work that you were doing, the hard work that that was previously done, when you just don't know if it's good enough or not, or if it's going to be good for you. And this was also nice because as I was working with these artists, they encouraged me. They said, you should make this software public. You should make it. You should put it out. It's gonna be interesting because they saw the potential, and so it was also really a nice interaction for me. So then I decided, I should do that. Their ideas came to me, and I implemented some of them, and so it's really nice. So it's interesting. That leasing publicly this thing has. Let's say it has also evolved my, let's say, artistic expression and everything. So it's really nice.
Well, it's something that I've often thought. I wish that I could help people more often go out and release their work to the public, because I think that there are some amazingly talented people that work in their bedroom, never share the work that they've done, and they're missing out on so many opportunities for other artists to try their work and to promote their work and to help them get the recognition that they deserve,
Sure, and you should do that. And I'm also lucky in that regard because Boštjan Pirner, my partner in this, he was really supportive in that way. And I said that it's nice, that you meet some people who really push you further with your work, and so that you really eventually show it to the public, and it can be really rewarding. And in a way, yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I also think of that of all art in general. How many art is there, that we don't know, and it can be really interesting. Yeah.
Right.
So,
well, I think in a way, it's sort of kind of a modern thing to. It's treated like it's not very cool to be enthusiastic. But to me, that seems really unfortunate, because there's some stuff to really be enthusiastic about, and I love getting excited about something new. I just really enjoy it, and as certainly was the case with your software.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, me too. I'm a bit of an enthusiast, because I sometimes talk like like crazy about also only about MC, and it's so. But I also, I mean, I like this also. I mean, was kind of interesting also when I'm doing like this some workshops and presentations, and there is always nice to see this maybe these young people that really are enthusiastic about things, and then I mean, sometimes you do a workshop and it will go for about an hour. Other times there was like a workshop and it would be like there for 5 hours, and talking.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting, today it feels like we are in some, like, I like to call it a little bit flat era. There's a lot of happening, but there's not a lot of enthusiasm, and I kind of like that people, get enthusiastic about. And I mean, not only enthusiastic, but then you research, then you develop, you are looking for new things, and I mean, and that's a good thing. And so it doesn't have to be like kind of boring. I mean, because for me it's never boring. I always say it, to the people, for me it's never boring. I always have something to talk and to think about it. So it's always interesting.
So unfortunately our time is already up, but before I let you go, I would like to hear, what are you doing to sort of like extend the world of Granular? So, I mean, you started off with this cool package, you extended it to the iPad using the Mira software, so you have a user interface on the iPad. You've expanded it to include these MPE devices like the Block and the Seaboard. What's next up for you in the software development?
Yeah, basically, currently I'm finishing the Max for Live integration, which is also, I get quite a lot of requests from different users to do that, and I also really like it. And I have adopted some really nice concept in that integration, so that you can put the live clip and directly put the clip into the buffer of Granular. You have like so you can change lively, clips, and it will go automatically in real time to the Granular engine, which I think is really nice. And obviously, thanks to the Ableton integration is really cool, because, it really pushes further the whole concept of Granular, thanks to I think this is also a wonderful idea by Ableton. I mean, the clips are amazing. And then if you think of it, so the clips are going to the Granular engine, and you can, let's say, adopt there the follow action, and you will get like this floating.
Right.
So it's kind of cool, that thing, and I really like it. So the next integration, which is obvious for the Ableton, was the push integration, which is also nice. You have like the basic controls on the push display that normally Max for Live device had. But another feature is that you can go to user mode and then control the presets of the Granular. So I've done the MIDI integration of that. And I'm also working on some kind of hack for the push display so that it will display the Granular waveform.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and it's getting quite cool. So I really love to see where it will go. And then I have I really love the concept to adopt it to as many controllers as possible. There is also an bidirectional MIDI integration with the MIDI Fighter Twister, which is also really nice, because you have like this bidirectional MIDI, so you see what's happening on the controller, and you can switch you have like these 16 pots, and you can control like for each grain the volume or the pitch, so it's kind of cool. And I'm doing also the monomark and the grid integration. Great. So it's a lot to do, and it's interesting. With every controller it's a bit different, so it's cool.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, I'll actually be looking forward to that mono integration, because I'm a big fan of theirs as well.
Cool.
Well, Andre, I want to thank you again for taking the time to have this discussion. It's really great hearing about the path that you took, but also your clear excitement about the continuing development of this instrument. I really look forward to the continued growth in it, and for those people out there who want to check it out. It's Granurise, GRANURISE.com, and you can learn all about it there, and as well as purchase it there as well, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thanks so much for having me, Darwin.
It was fantastic. With that, I'm going to let you have the rest of your day. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Right.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Big thanks to Andrej for having the chat. The idea of enthusiasm came up a lot in our discussion, and you can maybe see why. I love the fact that he is into the work that he's doing. He's also really into the work that other people are doing too, and that's something I think that we just aren't doing enough. So I'm really happy to kind of shine a light in his direction. I want to thank all of you, the listeners. I very quietly. I made kind of a big deal when we had the first 1 million downloads, and the second 1 million downloads kind of came pretty quick, and the third 1 million came as well. And so I just want to thank all you again for listening, downloading, all that good stuff. It's really been great. I also want to have a quick shout out to Jordan, who I ran into at Sightglass out in San Francisco. It was great meeting you. Thanks for reaching out via email. And I also got a couple of releases in the mail, kind of surprisingly. And so I'll be having some nice listening this week. I want to thank folks that are thinking of me in that way. With that, I'm going to let y'all have the rest of your week. Just back from San Francisco, so I'm going to spend some time with the family. And I hope that you have a great week. Make some music. Have fun. We'll catch you later. Bye.